So we've covered the context of the course outline, new ideas challenging the status quo. What is the problem that we're trying to solve here? Bitcoin, where did it come from and why? Bitcoin is just digital cash. Now we're going to look at what makes Bitcoin special. Let's talk about scarcity. This is the thing that makes Bitcoin so unique compared to other assets. What I mean by scarcity is the state of being in short supply. So if something is scarce and has a small supply, then the demand is going to be a lot higher. Think of, we're going back to the limited edition analogy here. Think of any limited edition product. They are usually a lot more expensive because there is a set limit on how many will be produced. This applies to assets as well. We have two types of assets, hard assets and soft assets. So let's break down hard assets first. Hard assets have traditionally been defined as tangible property or physical commodities like gold that are prized for their limited supply. They stand in contrast to soft assets like fiat currencies, stocks and bonds that can have their supply quickly increased by as little as a touch of a computer button. Here is the chairman of America's central bank again to explain this.
Fair to say you simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve banks.
So soft financial assets can be subjected to restructuring or defaults, as we talked about, reduction in dividends for stocks, and just experience other changes that undermine its long-term value, which we covered in the section about 1971 and the very, very large devaluations since. So throughout history, investors have relied on hard assets to manage risk and protect their long-term value in the face of instability and just economic downturns. When the supply of many soft assets traditionally rises, which places downward pressure on their value. So remember the Nike shoe analogy. The more shoes become available, the less desirable that they become. They're not limited edition anymore. There are centuries of data to show the value of gold and its traditional role as a store of value and a safe haven. However, physical hard assets such as gold have historically been subjected to unanticipated supply increases that have driven the price down. Examples of these include discovery of just large quantities of gold, which happened in the late 19th century in South Africa, and European exploration and conquest in South America in the 1500s, both of which put downward pressure on the price of gold because we found more gold, which means the supply went up. We can even look further ahead. An extreme supply increase could take place with innovations like mining asteroids that are just filled with precious minerals like gold. But here is why Bitcoin is different. So we've established gold has an ever increasing and just unknown supply, whereas Bitcoin has something called a hard cap of 21 million coins. Bitcoin's protocol software, which the blueprint introduced by Satoshi, stated a fixed and coded total supply. Basically, this means that the 21 million is the limit. You can't dig into the ground and mine more or find an asteroid with a mountain of Bitcoin on it. Instead of having an infinite supply like fiat money has, there is a finite supply of the stuff. Here is a video to help you understand a little bit more.
The reason that Bitcoin is magical is because there's only 21 million. I can create more real estate in New York City. I can create more cars. I can create more luxury watches. I can create more gold. I can create more shares of stock. I can create more bonds. I can create any commodity. They're commodities by definition. Given enough money and time, I can create infinite of any of them. Bitcoin is a scarcity. Okay, name another scarcity in the world, right? And technically, it's not clear there is another scarcity, right? A scarcity is something of which it is absolutely capped. If the price goes up by a factor of 1,000 or 1,000,000, it is absolutely capped. That is not the case with gold, soybeans, silver, stock, bonds, real estate, single-family homes, ships, planes, trains, nothing else. Everything else could be manufactured. And of course, if the price goes up, the incentive to manufacture more will go up, which is why, you know, buying a house isn't necessarily going to be a great store of value in an inflating economy, because you're going to have incentives for someone else to dilute the value of your house. If you do buy a house, better off to buy a house on land than a condo on the 57th floor of a building. And if you do buy it on land, better off to buy it on waterfront property. And if you buy waterfront property, better off to buy it on the beach. And if you buy it on the beach, you're better off to buy it in the most desirable location of affluent, intelligent people for the next 30 years.
I'm sure Pat has something to
Scarce
say about
pristine,
this.
which you had talked about, right?
Yeah.
You're better to be at scarce pristine or as close as you can.
And and you can do that for 10, 20, 30 years. That's Palm Beach, that's the Hamptons, right? You can figure that out. Now figure it out for 100 years.
Now, that was a guy called Michael Saylor, who has been a very strong advocate for Bitcoin. He is the founder and chairman of a NASDAQ-listed company called MicroStrategy. And in 2020, they took their company's treasury and they put it all into Bitcoin. So they saw that they were holding all of this cash and it was just melting away because of the devaluation in the dollar. So they decided to take it from a soft asset to a hard asset. There is plenty more resources where he talks about Bitcoin. If you like that, I will link them down below as well. But back to Bitcoin and supply. What Bitcoin's finite supply means is that once someone owns a certain percentage of the total supply of Bitcoin, that person will always own at least that percentage. Bitcoin is the only significant asset in history with this property, and its reliably finite supply is the reason why Bitcoin is deemed the world's hardest asset. Let's take a look at how this 21 million hard cap actually works, and I do find it easier to work back. So let me frame it up. So today, assets are very unknown. We've established we can't predict whether we'll find a whole new cluster of gold or when the government will print a mountain of fiat money, which both would dramatically increase the supply. It's extremely unknown. Whereas Bitcoin is programmed and is transparent. We know everything that has happened, is happening, and will happen in the future. Here is the chart of the supply. We're going to break it down, so don't worry. The orange line represents the amount of Bitcoin released. And you can see up the top right that it hits 21,000K, which is 21 million. Little confusing. The blue line represents the inflation rate of Bitcoin. So new Bitcoins will keep coming into existence until the year 2140 or thereabouts, which is when the 21 million hard cap is hit and inflation hits pretty much zero. Approximately 94% of all Bitcoins that will ever exist have already been created. So at the time of me recording this, Roughly 19.6 million of the 21 million total coins exist today. The remaining supply of Bitcoin is growing at less than 1% per year after April 2024, and this decreases every 4 years. This is why the blue line looks a bit like a staircase going down. The amount of Bitcoin coming into existence is decreasing until it hits near zero in 2140. The slowdown in the creation of new Bitcoins occurs because of a rule coded into Bitcoin software that is referred to as the halving, where approximately every 4 years, or each step down of the staircase, the number of new Bitcoins coming into existence is cut in half, hence halving. Here is the chart that shows exactly how many new Bitcoins come into existence over each 4-year period. While new Bitcoins will continue to be created for the next 100 plus years, more than 98% of all Bitcoins that will ever exist will have been created over the next decade by the year 2030. In other words, over time, new Bitcoins become scarcer and scarcer until ultimately the software's protocol 21 million coin limit is reached and the creation of new Bitcoins completely ceases. This is the reason why Bitcoin has been the best performing asset class since 2011, outstripping all other asset classes by multiple factors. To grab a closer look at this, please just pause the video and have a quick scan through it. Okay, I hope you've managed to keep up on this section. This is probably the most technical section we'll do, but understanding this is vital to your overall understanding of the value of Bitcoin and why so many people are going crazy about it. It's both a hard asset and a peer-to-peer way of sending value with no middleman, which we've never seen before, which for some is extremely scary, but it's also an opportunity for others to learn early on and be ahead of the game. So I am very glad that you're here. I have included lots more resources to go deeper into this topic. There are also resources in there about mining. So this is the process which brings new Bitcoins into existence. I am very conscious of blowing your mind as this becomes technical. And as I stated at the beginning, this is not why I created this course. I prefer to stick on the problem and the solution, which I think at this stage is more important than essentially learning how an internal combustion engine works. Please remember that it's not a thing that will suddenly all click for you. I have been learning about Bitcoin for years and years. And I remember it took me a long time to get my head around some of this stuff. Like, it took me way too long, actually, for some of the stuff. But just remember, it's about taking little bits and just learning one bit of it at a time, which is why I try and use analogies, videos, and stories throughout, because they're the things that people remember.